It's lovely when Vince asks us to come and do speeches, because I love talking to the university and the students about entrepreneurship, and I've got a real passion for that. And being in such an esteemed group of speakers as well, I asked Vince if I could go on first, because when you've got other good speakers, you don't know what they're going to say. So I'm going to tell you what I say. If they contradict me or say something completely different, that's absolutely brilliant, because it'll get something flowing, and we can have a proper discussion about. If we all say the same thing, it'll be really boring. So hopefully I'll say something controversial, they can counteract it and whatever. And that's probably around what business is about, because there isn't one answer. There certainly isn't one answer. When we are helping businesses start up, they're all individual. It's so specific to that individual circumstances, their own drive, their own sector, the amount of money they're bringing to the pot or not, as most of the cases are, as to how you can help them around the finance sector. I haven't got any PowerPoint presentations, but as Vince has said, I'm here for anybody to chat to on a later basis. What I thought I'd do is I'd give you a little bit of around what I do and what my business does. So hopefully I've got a bit of credibility. A bit of discussion around how I've got some empathy with what you are doing and what students are doing when they're setting up a business. What we do with the businesses and what we do with students when we're trying to help them. A little bit about why I think students might or might not be different from the other people that we help set up a business, which again you might recognise or you might not recognise, and then a few do's and don'ts. I'll throw in little bits and pieces around the national picture, and I'll tell you how I know little bits and pieces around that later on. But my particular angle isn't academic, it's just about what we do as a business and what we've done over the last 20 odd years. I run an organisation called the Business Innovation Centre in Sunderland, just down the road on an old ex-shipbuilding site. And we provide incubation and innovation, and more importantly for me, or the most exciting part we do, is that we help people set up a business. We've got 220 business units down there. So it's quite big, but it's not all for startups. If any of you run incubation, you cannot just do it on incubation because it'll go bust. You need somebody to underwrite it, or you need some other businesses within your units to make it work properly. Incubation is quite a resource-intensive activity, not just on people's time, but obviously for making it into a financial viable unit, it's quite difficult. So we also have other accommodation there for more established businesses, which help us to fund that. Without going into too much, I'm also the current Ernst Young Social Entrepreneur of the Year for the North, and the North goes down to Sheffield. We are a social enterprise. We're a not-for-profit organisation, private sector led. We don't get any money off anybody. We have to find our own money, and I can come on to that about how I've got some empathy with businesses trying to find money later on. But I think what we do is what you all do, and it links in with, I think we do education. I think that's what we do. We get people in, as you do, from various backgrounds and viewpoints. We give them as much business skills, exposure to business support that we possibly can. We try to help them with a framework. We try to help them with some element of framework to try and get them to a certain stage, and then they open out the door, and hopefully what they've learned and what they've prepared themselves for, they can take into a successful business. It's the same as what you were doing in education, whether that's an academic side or what you're doing through the support that you give students as well. So over the last 20 odd years, my organisation has helped 4,500 people set up a business. So we've been around a while, and we know what we're doing, I also lead the enterprise agencies. There's a BIS accredited thing you can get, which is about being an enterprise agency. which they'll all be in your local patches. Wherever you are, there'll be an enterprise agency. There's 100 and odd at the moment across the country. All social enterprises, all not-for-profit, but all doing the same sort of thing as we do. So if you don't know who they are, on your patch, I'll point you in the right direction. So I'll lead those on a northeastern basis, and on that northeastern basis, we've helped 50,000 people set up a business. On a national basis, I'm the chairman of the national body, which is called the National Enterprise Network, and across the 100-odd members, we've helped 500,000 people set up a business. Now, I've seen about 50 in any great detail, so I'm not professing that I have had an interaction with all of those businesses, but as a collective, we obviously come together to share knowledge, share what's going on, share finance, share what we think's going on in the sector. So on that basis, we build up a great knowledge bank. We also have interaction with government around what is possibly happening in the enterprise arena. There seem to be going down two routes around business support and business startup at the moment nationally. They have this DWP sector, which has a completely different view for what biz does. The DWP sector is about, bluntly, getting people off the dole and getting the welfare budget down. So there's the programs like the New Entrepreneurs Allowance, New Entrepreneurs Program, which is very successful, gets lots and lots of people through the system, is very, very helpful to those particular people who are on GSA or those kinds of benefits, to help them set up a business. Very, very successful, very, very cheap for the government, and they seem to like that. They've just put out another set of tenders, so that's going to go on for another 3 years. So it's going to go beyond whatever happens with this government. It will go on for another 3 years, so there's some support there. And I'll come on later on about what kind of support you can get through that programme. They also have another national programme called Ready for Business, which is for non-unemployed individuals. Very similar, but you don't get an allowance at the end of it. So it's about business support, helping people do business startup programs, business skills, all the things that I mentioned that we do. So we run both of those programs in the Northeast, but they are national programs. And you should, again, be able to get access to the people delivering those programs to come and deliver to your students. Hand up. There's no. If you want the I don't think government work like that. They're trying a lot with business growth hubs, but again, what government have done is they've said each LEP area have a business growth hub. So, do you know what I mean? You end up with 40, 50 points of reference for what's going on in your local patch. But they would be the main points to go to for your local bit. The LEP growth hubs would be the point of contact to go to. How good they are, how well they're kept up to date, God knows. There's some really good ones. The Cumbria one's really good. The Liverpool one's really good. The Manchester one's really good. The Northeast one isn't up and running yet. Tees Valley have something called their Compass, which is good. It's very good. But they're at different stages of development. But that would be the point of contact to go to, and they should be pointing you in the right direction as to where the support's available. If you do need to know what's going on in your local patch around those two particular programs, if Vince gives me details, I'll be able to point you in the right direction as to who's delivering in those patches. But those programs, as I say, they're national, and you should have access to all of those. So if whoever's delivering those patches can come in and deliver that program to your students for nothing, should be doing it for nothing, because they're getting paid off the government. So integrating that into whatever you're offering should be possible. On the biz side, they seem to be wanting to concentrate on high growth. limited government money, let's just concentrate on high growth startups. They don't really know what they mean by high growth startups. They haven't got a definition, they haven't got a, you know, what sector they're talking about, but they just want to concentrate on high growth startups. It seems to be something that's going to double or treble in a 3-year period around their turnover, but even that's a bit woolly. And as we all know, it isn't just going to be technological businesses are going to double and treble in those periods. So it's a bit muddy as to what government wants for non-unemployed type startups in the future. But as I say, those two particular programs, the NEA for unemployed and ready for business, are continuing in the future, and you should be able to take advantage of those. So, sorry. Google will find it. It will. I'm sure Google will find it. I'm sure you're right. We do, as Vince mentioned, we're part of the sort of this enterprise ecosystem in Sunderland, which I think's certainly coming together in a sensible way. We deliver some business skills and business start and business planning workshops and support with Vince and various others in the city to the students that are based in the enterprise place. And it's absolutely fantastic. It really is a great facility and something that we are certainly proud of being associated with the plans that Vincent mentioned earlier. Hopefully that will go from strength to strength. The Northeast's a bit strange. We have a really low startup rate, and we get a bit excited about that sometimes. However, on the counterbalance of all that, we have one of the lowest failure rates in the country. Nobody mentions that. Nobody ever mentions that. So now that's a really good thing. So if you can balance those two things out, we've got quite a vibrant little system going on. We'd obviously want more and more and more, but if we get more and more and more and we don't make them sustainable, then we haven't got a net gain. So whatever we do needs to have this added value stuff that we're working with the university on. There's no point in just getting more and more and more and more and more unless we're adding value and the survival rate is maintained or doesn't dip dramatically on the basis of all that. That doesn't mean that people who start up and fail don't gain something through the process, but obviously you don't want to put people through that on too much of a basis. Empathy with people raising money. Well, I'm moving house today, and it wasn't till about 10 o'clock that the money came through from the mortgage. And if I could have hit somebody yesterday from the bank, it would have been, so I know the frustrations of setting up and of raising money. And we all do it all the time. We all raise money all the time. And it's no different if students or whatever wanting to raise money. Every single day, I would have thought, in some respect, we're thinking about money and we're thinking about how we make more money or we get money that we haven't got in our normal lives. And it's no different to people setting up a business. It's just a different context as far as I'm concerned. The BIC itself, as I say, we set up as a social enterprise. We nicked an idea, like most businesses do. And we went over to Barcelona, me and a couple of other people, and saw something called a Business Innovation Centre in Barcelona and thought, we could do that in Sunderland. So we started building some incubator units 20 years ago. We had to raise money. Now at the time, there was lots of government money flying around. Those days have gone. But there was a lot of government money flying around, so we managed to get some ERDF, we managed to get some money from Nissan at the time, and a couple of other private investors, private organisations, Northern Electric when they were around, and we had a bit of money that we were able to put in. And like all businesses, once we'd proved that model, it was a lot easier the second time, and a lot easier the third time, and a lot easier the fourth time. We've done it 7 times now, raising money for different things. Not equity, primarily through government support or government grants. But you have to go through the same process. You have to understand what they want. You have to tell the story. You have to sell yourself to those organisations and paint a picture that they can buy into, whether that's an investor or whether it's a government organisation or whether it's a private organisation. So we've been through that. We've raised about 11 million over the 20 odd years that we've been going. But the first time is always the hardest, like anything else. Once you get a history behind you, it's a lot easier. So when we've been doing our stuff, of the 4,500 that we've helped, and we're not untypical of the rest of the country. About 95% of people in some shape or form when they come to us need finance. Some of them have some finance, but 95% of them need some further finance in some shape or form. And that's mainly because they come in with weird expectations or weird understandings of what they want and what they need. So it's probably not untypical, but about 40% of them come in and they've underestimated how much they need, 40% have overestimated what they need, and there's about 20% get reasonably close to what they need, but they get really muddled up. They get muddled up between, I need 10 grand to start my business, which is about startup capital, and forget that they might need some working capital in month 2 when somebody doesn't pay the debt, or they're having to pay up front for everything because they're a new business. So they get really muddled. They just concentrate on how do I get started, and it's one of the things I'm sure you've all come across, but it's getting that mindset around it isn't just about what the money is at the beginning to get you going. It's what you might need when you actually get into your business. It might be 6 months down the route that that it might be a business that's got some kind of seasonality about it, but everything's running wonderfully along for 6 months, and then there's something falls off. You have to think about that now, or else you're going to struggle. So trying to get people, and a lot of it is around just a mentality about I want to run my business. I want to run my business. That's great. Get that enthusiasm and keep it going, but also have a bit of reality around what might be happening around finance. Again, I don't know what your experience is, but the average amount over the 20 odd years that we've been going, and it hasn't changed dramatically over the 20 odd years, weirdly, that people need to set up a business is about 4 grand. Obviously there's massive variations around that, but it's usually around about that 4 or 5 grand mark is about the average. Obviously you get some 10s, 20s, 50s, but most of the time it's around that level. Now most of us would say that's not very much, but it is. It's sometimes it really isn't. I think when I come on to why I think students might be slightly different, that might sort of fit in. So weirdly, when I would talk about finance, I think finance is all about selling. That's what we tell people. When you're trying to raise finance, it's all about how you sell yourself. In whether it's yourself, whether it's your product, whether it's your vision, it's all about how you sell yourself. And the world is changing so much that the chances of getting in front of somebody to sell yourself is getting harder and harder. It's like me on the phone yesterday to somebody in Scotland trying to get me mortgage. I could shout as much as I wanted and get as angry as I wanted, but it's really, really hard sometimes to get your point over. So the way that you get your point over has to be done in different ways to be able to sell yourself, and it's something that we try to drill into people. Finance is finance, but it's all about how you do the sell, whether you're going to get there in the end or not. Good ideas always attract money. That's a well-known hackneyed phrase, but they don't sometimes if they've got the wrong people around them and they've got the wrong team or the wrong individual or whatever. Good ideas don't always attract money. If the person sits in a room and doesn't tell anybody about it, they've got to get out and they've got to, or have advocates or mentors or whatever it is, get out there and get somebody who's got some of those skills to help you through the process. And I think one of the things about being an entrepreneur or setting up your own business, how you get that money in the first place and how you set up is part of that entrepreneurial drive. If you've got it, you'll be okay at it. If you haven't got it, you need some help. And that's part of the process about how entrepreneurial you are, about how you can raise that money or funding in the first place. And the first thing that we do, and hopefully others do as well, is we try to make them aware of what's free. Sometimes they come in and they just say, I need 10 grand to do this, this and this. Make as much use of what's free. The stuff that goes through the university, I mean, I don't think students quite appreciate how what they've got in places like the enterprise place and various other units, which I'm sure you're all associated with in your own environments. But to have access to people who are going to help you, and have access to mentors, and to have access to people who are going to listen to you in the first place. When I talked about face-to-face, it's invaluable to have face-to-face contact with people. So we try to encourage them to use whatever's available as much as possible. We try to get them, there's a phrase in the Northeast with shy Ben's getting out, is to ask all the time. If they can ask for something, you might get it for nothing. It's a good trait to have for the rest of your entrepreneurial life. Ask somebody, you might be surprised at how many times they say yes. Solicitors, accountants, other bodies, they will do stuff for nothing. If you can sell yourself, you can get them excited about what you're doing. They're not trying to buy into your business. They're not looking for whatever. They might see that they might get an audit fee in 5 years' time or whatever, but there's a lot of stuff going on. But if you don't ask, you don't get. So again, try to get them out, try to get them exposed to as much as possible. And there is an element of pro bono work that goes on around there. Utilize the people that are around you. The number of people who say, I need some money for a website, just does my head in. That's what people seem to want, or an app, or whatever it is. What I'd probably suggest to students is, on the other side of the fence, you've got a whole load of probably graphic designers and whatever doing stuff who want to get into setting up businesses doing graphic design, who can't get the credibility because they haven't got anything under the belt. Get them to do for nothing. Get them both to see the benefits of I'll do your website or whatever it is that want your logo, whatever it is, for nothing. I've got some credibility because I've helped you set up a business, and I can go out to other businesses and say, look, I've got 3 websites up and running already. And on the same side, you've got somebody who's setting up a business who's had a relatively free website. So trying again to utilize that network that you've got around the students is again, I think it's invaluable. But also to be careful. So then don't say to the person who's done the website, you can have 50% of my business because you've done my website, which we see happening all over the place as well. It's just madness. It's worth 300 quid or something, and you're giving away X% of your business. So to be really careful that they don't fall into that trap, but to utilize the networks that they do have. And then we get them to minimize the costs. So there's some really good things around HP at the moment and leasing. So don't go out and buy a van or a car or whatever it is. If you can, get some HP or leasing. And you can get it even with, unless you're in, I know students have different types of debt. You can get it. Don't get those costs up front if you can avoid it. Do stuff around, again, they sort of say we need some marketing or some advertising. We've seen lots of people who just do stunts to get some stuff in the press. So they'll do something daft, or that it's going to attract attention, so they get something in the local newspaper, and it gets them the publicity that they wanted, rather than writing a really boring article about, I've just set up my business and it is, that costs nothing. You just get the local paper to say, there's this really good business setting up, and they're looking for good news stories. So you can get things for free like that. But use the mentoring and the networking that's available. To me, that's the key. It's about exposing yourselves or exposing them to as much as possible and learning. And if you can get them to listen, it's superb. My background's accountancy, and I trained with KPMG, and accountancy's really boring. But over that sort of 6 or 7 year period, we used to do audits. And audits are really, again, you're kind of getting worse than doing audits. You're going in and you're just checking what other people have already done. But part of that is you're sitting with the managing director or the sales director or whatever it is, and you're sitting listening about what they've done in their business. And I got exposed to, you know, probably one a week, one entrepreneur every week when we were going around doing our work for 7 years. And you just sit and listen to them. And you listen to what they've done right. You can walk into businesses and where the place has fallen apart, and you can usually tell why it's fallen apart because of the person running it or the person involved in the business. And that's just the same as what I'm saying about network and mentoring. If you can get the students to be exposed to as much as possible, good and bad, and let them take it all in and then decide themselves what they want to take out of those interactions, and hopefully put it into practice in their own businesses. I think that's fantastic. And as I say, the stuff that Vince and his team do in Sunderland is superb around that. Grants. There's not many grants. If I go back 20 years, there used to be loads of grants for people to set up in business. Our local authority does little bits and pieces, tends to be around manufacturing and software and other exciting areas, but there's not a lot around, to be honest. If you are unemployed, so if you get to the end of the 3 years, I would suggest, unless they really don't want to, I would suggest that the students sign on for 1 day. Because if they sign on for 1 day, they get access to the new enterprise allowance scheme, which is not much, but it's about 1,300 quid you get as a grant over a period of time to help you through your first 6 months worth of trading. It's free money. It's about the only free money that's flying around. So if they can get their head around going into a job centre and signing on, they'll get access to 1,300 quid and a mentor, and they get access to cheap loans. So they can get a loan for up to £2,500 at 6% unsecured. You don't have to be long-term unemployed, you just have to be unemployed for a day. So again, it's a bit psychological, but if they can get their heads around that, that is available, and that's national. Again, weirdly, in that system, if you get into the job centres, they have flexible money. So we've had people who've gone in and said, I want to be a driving instructor is a bad example, and I kind of drive, but but they've got, you know, pots of money where they will give you it to help you become employable, and self-employment is just as valid as that for that. So if you put a decent little plan together and you say, I need 1,200 quid to do this, this, and this, they'll give you it to get you off the dole, even though you've just been through university, you've just signed on, and you only want to be on for 6 weeks. That doesn't really matter. You're classed as a job centre statistic. So take advantage of that, as I say, but you've got to be careful about what message you're passing out to the student when they eventually leave. Innovation vouchers are still available. I don't know whether the Sunderland and lots of other universities.
We've had a few deputies from NEBIC.
Right, okay. So there's, you know, innovation vouchers are there, apparently still for startups. I'm not convinced startups always use them, but if you do need help from the university to set up your business or other innovation providers, then obviously you can get the university to supply it and get it for free up to £5,000. Is it the Nesta website or something like that? I think that's where you'd get access to that. But businesses can use the university's expertise to help them set up a business. And there's, as I say, there's grants available. And then when you've sort of done all that and you've got your grants and your free money and whatever, you're going to have a gap as to what you need to go and find to actually set up your business. And as I said before, there's the old phrase of friends, families and fools. And that's where you normally go. That's where all of us go when we want anything out of life to start off with, I would suggest. Whether you, as my son, who's at Sunderland University at the moment, comes and says, I've run out of my grant, can you lend us some money till my money comes through in January? Yes, it is that early. He has got a long way to go to the last 3rd of January, knowing quite well that I'm not going to get it back. That's what people tend to do, and they ask people who they can where they can see the passion or the potential within people. And I say this is one of the benefits of face-to-face. When you're going around with friends, family, and fools, they usually know you, and they'll know whether they'll be honest with you. They'll say, I wouldn't put 3 grand into you. There's absolutely no way. I don't think that's a good idea. So you'll get some honest advice, but you'll have the opportunity to present yourself and sell yourself, but they'll know what's behind it. So it's a really good starting point. But again, be careful. Families fall out, friends fall out. If you can get it on a solid footing, don't just take 5 grand off your friend, and then suddenly they think they've got 50% of the business and you make money or whatever, or they come hounding after you. Try and get it on a solid-ish basis, so that you don't get yourself into problems later on. And also, if that business expands, you really need to know what that money was about. Was it a loan? Was it equity? Was it whatever? We see a lot of businesses get into a lot of problems when they want to expand because they've taken money on board at an early stage that wasn't properly defined, if you know what I mean. So if you run your business and suddenly somebody says, well, actually, I think I own 50% of that business, and you're trying to get some equity fund, and you're stuffed. You're absolutely stuffed. So again, get it on a solid basis. And then once you've got what is classed as your money, because nobody needs to know that it's family or friends or whatever, that makes life so much more easy to go and get other types of finance. And using a horrible phrase, it means you've got skin in the game, and other funders love it. They absolutely love it, that you're putting something up as well. And if you don't, it's quite hard to convince people just with your enthusiasm or whatever. And the main reason for that is because after that, it starts getting a bit faceless, as I said before. You tend to get into loans and equity, which are difficult to sell. And what people tend to use is a business plan, because they get asked for a business plan. So the loan and equity markets usually want something, changing slightly with crowdfunding and stuff like that, but they want a plan. So that's what a lot of people in the business support network, you would probably help people writing business plans. And to me, the business plan is just getting what's up there onto a piece of paper. It's nothing more than that. People get frightened by business plans. They really, really do get frightened by business plans. But it's really just a structure to try and get down what your business is about, that you've thought through the answers. So when you see Dragon's Den, not many people get the opportunity to do Dragon's Den stuff. You don't usually see the funder in front of you and they get them to ask questions, but you'll realise that the ones who get the money are the ones who can answer the questions. So what is your turnover, what's your gross margin, whatever. And it's about confidence that you've thought things through. And it's not always going to be rosy. People like to see that you've thought of the downside. One of the things around finance that we see ridiculously all the time is that when people have set up their business, they just have this one thing that shows they're going to make whatever. And encouragingly, a lot of the time they get into financial difficulties because they're actually doing better than they thought. And they get into real problems with overtrading, absolutely ridiculous problems with overtrading. So the early stage business, they're doing twice as much as they thought they were going to be doing. So they've got loads of money in debtors that they can't get out. And every supplier wants all the money up front, and they're having to buy twice as much to deal with that. And they just get into a real mess with overtrading, which is a fantastic problem to have, but it's really, really frustrating because they've never thought of it. So having something within your business plan, which is you can call it sensitivity analysis, you can call it whatever you want, but getting people to think, students as much as anybody else, to think about upsides and downsides and what they would do is invaluable. And as I say, but on the converse side is what happens if the sales don't come in? Is my business going to go under within 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 5 weeks or whatever? So the business plans, as I say, we hopefully try to get people to just get what's up there on a piece of paper, but then try to treat it as a prospectus or a selling document or whatever, because it's just going to go into a black hole sometimes. It just goes in and people read it. And so all your enthusiasm, all of your knowledge, skills, mentoring networks, all the stuff that you've learned, if you kind of sometimes get that down on paper or in some other forum, it loses it. So if you can treat the business plan like a little mini prospectus without getting too technical, and I think when I touch on crowdfunding, I think that's where that's the world that's getting exciting in my view, around those areas. Banks, much as the government would like you to believe, don't lend to startups. The latest statistics I've seen are that for a pure startup, the banks are only approving 0.3% of pure startups. What the banks do is they treat anybody up to a year as a startup. So what they tend to do is lend to you after you've had a little bit of trading and count that as helping startups. It's a bit of a game. It's just the way the government banks are. But if you're a pure startup with no history and you just put something in, you've still got a really, really low chance of getting that money. They'll try to sell you invoice discounting and factoring and all these other wonderful things, which are fine. But again, one of the things that once you get into them, it's really hard to get out of them. And I would discourage people from doing that. We still see a lot of people using credit cards. I would say 25% of people who we help set up a business just use their own credit card. If you think you're going to grow and you're confident, and you're really, really confident that you're going to get to where you want to be really quickly, it's a really good source of money, because you can usually get it quite easily. If you've been working and stuff like that, and you've got like, but as I say, for certain types of individual, it's the wrong thing to do. But it's still a source of money that people are still using on a regular basis to start up their businesses. If the businesses go wrong, it's a really high, it's a really, really high rate of penalty to be paying to go down that route. Government have brought out startup loans under various guises. I think they started off with just young people, and then now they've expanded it to everybody else. You can get up to 25 grand through that route. Unsecured loans up to 6%, which is a really good deal. It's an absolutely cracking deal. The only massive downside, and I think it is for students more than anybody, is that it's personal debt. You can't hide behind any incorporation. So it's, again, be very open with everybody about what's going on with startup loans. It is personal debt, and it's people need to be more than aware about what they're getting themselves into. In the Northeast, we've got various pots of money around loans. We've got something called the Regional Micro Loan Fund. Again, you can get up to 50 grand at 9%. Lots and lots of little pots starting to come up now, certainly around social enterprise. There's something called the Social Incubator North, Co-op Social Enterprise Loans, which are national. It's an area that government seem to be really, really interested in, and private equity, to be fair, around social enterprise. Lots and lots and lots of money, but like anything else, you just have to apply. Faceless, put your business plan forward, hope you get it. So that's what I'm saying. I think the document that you put forward needs to be sensible. It can't be just a 4-page thing with a 1-year cash flow. It's just not going to happen. And you're kidding yourself if that's what you believe. Equity. In the northeast, we have something called proof of concept, which is you can get up to £100,000. That's government money or European money. That's available through Northeast Access to Finance. Again, if anybody needs to know how to get hold of that, I'll put them in touch with them. Lots of technology funds around equity setting up in the northeast. Again, up to 30, 40 grand. If you're in that sector, there's a lot of interest, a lot of people, and a lot of money available to move into that. But it's around equity, so you're going to have to give up some of your business. And the whole sort of ethos of preparing people to understand about giving some of your business up. It's one of the hardest things I think you can ever try and do. Is if somebody's really passionate about something, if it's a product or a service or whatever, and they want to do it, to get them to give up some of their business is quite difficult, because they think somebody should just give them money. But the whole world of crowdfunding, which I think Alan's going to come on to it in a little bit more detail, is probably the most exciting thing I've ever seen while I've been going around about raising finance. I think it's going to change everything that we do. I'm not going to go into crowdfunding in any massive detail, but it is, in my view, as I say, I think that's what's going to change what's going on. There's so many platforms now. You've got things like Kickstarter, which are helping the creative industries, relatively low value amounts. They can help lots and lots of things. We've helped bands set up, to release their first and second singles and stuff like that, which is really low amounts of money, but you can get it, and it still tends to be friends and families, mind, who put the money in, but they're putting the money in a more formal setting. You'll have seen just 2 days ago that cancer research are now raising money via crowdfunding for various bits of research, and you can go to the moon or send some of your hair or something like that to the moon in 10 years' time through crowdfunding. So you put money in, you put it into whatever that project is to get the next landing on the moon. You put your money in and you have the opportunity to send us some DNA from your hair or something, or a short video clip or something as part of that project. So it's mass participation, and I think that's the way business is going to be going around raising finance, I suspect. Not just equity, but on loans. It's changing the loan market quite dramatically as well. What else? I've done that. And whilst I wouldn't always suggest it, sometimes it might be easier for a business to just get going. It's that difficult thing. There's a fair bit of money available once you've started. So sometimes we try, for example, we're talking about websites. Certainly in the Northeast, you can get 50% towards the cost of your website if you're trading. So sometimes we encourage people to just get a few sales under your belt. Just, it might not be right, but just get some sales under your belt. Get established in a really, really small way, but you're actually trading, and then you get access to other funds that you wouldn't otherwise have got available to you. It's probably not always the best advice, but it might in certain circumstances, it might just get them there. So in the Northeast, they've got something called the NBSL fund, which if you buy a consultant in, you get 50% or so of your costs, but you can't get it unless you've started up in business. So again, I suppose just try to be a little bit creative around that. And once you've set up, if you're going to create jobs, there's loads of money. There's loads of, if you're going to create jobs in the Northeast, you can get lots of money. But you have to actually create those jobs. And as we know, not all businesses create jobs. Not all of them are high growth. But you can get, you know, in the Northeast, you can get up to 10 grand a job if you're taking somebody on who you're employing for 20 grand. So, you know, as I say, once you hopefully get going, it's absolutely fine. Students, and I hope you recognize some of these things. We have a more of a female-male mix than we do in the general population. Don't know whether that's anything to do with Sunderland University or whatever, but we see a lot more female entrepreneurs coming through in the student population than we do in the generic population, which is quite interesting and quite exciting. We get massive extremes. So we get the cocky, I'm going to take on the world. My idea is the best thing since sliced bread. Just let me out the world, and I'm going to take it on. And we also get the one that sits in the bedroom and doesn't tell anybody. It has a good idea, but just won't get out, won't tell anybody, and whatever. So you do tend to get massive extremes with students, and you obviously have to deal with them on a different basis. Some of them need kicking, and some of them need not always a bit of reality, but you know, managing is probably in your face all the time, and whatever, and you'll recognise these people on a regular basis. They tend to come together as 2 people or 3 people or 4 people. See that a lot more than you'd see in normal business, and it's because they're friends and they like being around that friendship, that kind of partnership, support mechanism, stroke, whatever it is, but it's not always the best thing for setting up business. It really isn't always the best thing for setting up business. So that needs managing, I think, a lot more than it does in the generic startup arena. And as I say, with any partnership, when we help normal partnerships, getting that balance about who's bringing what to the table and it being something that's sustainable in the long term is really hard. You know, you might get a creative person, you might get a finance person, you might get whatever, but they're not always bringing the same to the pot. And we have lots of instances where businesses set off, and it does happen in students a lot, and then one doesn't become interested, and one's doing all the work, and one's flitting around doing something else, but they've set it up as if it's a 50% partnership, and it just gets really messy. So trying to manage that, I think, for students is really quite hard, because they do like that for obvious reasons, coming together as a team, because they trust people, or they think that they're friends till they get to the end of the 3rd year. They tend to concentrate on student offerings, again, because that's what they're comfortable with. They want to sell things to other students. No, most of the students haven't got any money. It's one of the real problems. They see an opportunity because they like it and they're passionate about it, and it's fantastic. But they say, and my market is him or her next door, and you say, well, have they got any money? No, they're in loads of debt. And so you've got to sometimes bring a bit of reality to what they're doing, which is understandable. So I think that's always very interesting. When I was talking about skin in the game and bringing money to raising finance, students have debt, and they've usually used mum and dad and whatever in various shapes or form through their 3 years or 4 years or whatever it is in university. So I'm going back to mum and dad and saying, by the way, I've got this great idea as well. How do you fancy lending us 15 grand to? They just might not have it. They might have said, isn't it time you got a proper job? Start paying off some of this debt. So I think they're in a really difficult position sometimes, and quite unique to other startups. People who set up, weirdly, people who set up in business who are unemployed, it's usually quite easy. And I mean this in not in any kind of weird way. They've just got a lot less to lose. And we have more difficulty getting people who are employed to set up a business than we do unemployed. Because that jump from having a secure 30, 40, whatever grand a year job with you've got 3 kids and to jump out of that into self-employment is so much harder for a lot of people than it is, because they automatically want 30, 40 grand a year covered into the first year. Very, very, very hard. But I think students are at a bit of a disadvantage when they're talking about trying to raise other funds within their own group. It tends to have been eaten up in some shape or form. The dead enthusiastic, which is a pleasure sometimes, unless they're right in your face all the time. But capturing that and taking it to the next level is really, really important. There tend to be a lot more social value businesses coming out of universities than anywhere else. I think that's just a thing over time. They're looking at the problems in the world. I mean, I'm sure I did it when I was at university. You look at all the problems of the world and you think you could probably solve them and you think you can make a difference and stuff like that. So it might not be new, but certainly social value and social enterprise businesses are big on the agenda, and I think the students have definitely got a massive place around that agenda. It's right as well. Government love it. There's loan funds, as I say, and there's a lot of support around that area, but I think they're
definitely growing a lot.
Oh yeah,
social enterprise engagement.
Absolutely.
Many more.
Yeah, and as I say, I think that youthful enthusiasm to change the world and have an effect, if you can capture that and get it into the social enterprise businesses, I think is great. They tend to be technological. So when I started off, everybody wanted a website, and everybody wanted an app, and now everything's done on social media. So a lot of stuff comes around with that area. They think differently. To certainly a lot of other businesses that we come into, you know, how they get to their marketplace is very, very different to what a lot of us might have done 10, 15 years ago. A completely different view of the world and how you get out into the world and how you sell your product is very, very different with a lot of students and very different to the rest of the population, which I think is great. I think it's absolutely fantastic. But it means the people who are advising them need to understand. So we have had to understand what's going on in that market a lot more. You can't give advice out to somebody who knows potentially 10 times more than you do, and you can't express an opinion about whether you think it's a good route to market or it's a good use of the time and technology. So we've had to change as an organisation.
There is, of course, special money for social enterprises from the Cabinet Office.
Yeah, there is. Yeah. There certainly is. A lot of feasibility money. So if you want to set up a social enterprise, we've helped a couple of businesses that the government or the local authorities are shutting down a lot of libraries and a lot of organisations, a lot of community centres, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of money, government money, for people to do feasibility studies, and it's all grants. This is not money that you have to pay back. Grants to help people look at social assets and try to get them into a social setting, and then set up social businesses that are viable, hopefully, to take forward. So the great vehicles, if people have a social ethos, if they want to get involved in things like that, there's a lot of things that you can get money to look at feasibilities, to try and set up businesses around those things. Once they get good, you've got to run it like any other business. It's a business. Social enterprises aren't things that are underwritten by anybody. They're proper businesses. But there's some support there, as Alan said, to help people investigate the possibilities of that. So, what would I give as advice? I would tell any student to milk everybody for everything they possibly can. just get out there and absolutely milk everybody. I couldn't think of a better bit of advice. I'd tell them not to spend their money up front. If they can, use other people's money if you possibly can, but there does get that balance where you can't get other people's money until you've got your own money. But obviously don't use all your money. Again, we've had businesses come through the door where they've said, I've got this idea and I've spent the last 5 years on it and I've spent 25 grand on it and it's ready now and I want to set up a business. If they'd come to you a lot earlier with their 25 grand, you probably could have made that 50 grand and you know, they've got a chance. The fact that they've got no money to bring to the table to an investor makes it more difficult. So if you can use other people's money, use other people's money. Be careful of partnerships, and as I think I've gone on before, get them to really know the business, keep challenging them all the time. They're going to get challenged all the way through any sort of fundraising activity. So the more you can ask them the questions and ask them to get what's up there onto a piece of paper or in whatever kind of format, the better. And encourage them. I think I said before, they're going to change the world. Whatever messes, whatever generation makes, you always look to the young people to change and solve it for you. So if they don't do a damn good job and we don't help them, I can't have a nice retirement. So any support that we can give young people and students, I think we should all get behind that, and I'm sure you're all behind that anyway. God knows whether that was what you wanted to hear.